Welcome to the Witcher Lorecast, the show that explores the vast lore behind the Witcher games, show, and books. Witchers, mages, minstrels, welcome to the Witcher Lorecast. This is your host, Tom, or Robots, and I'm back with my good buddy, Toasticus. Have I done that one before?
I've not heard that one before. I don't think so. At least I don't think so.
It occurred to me, and I was like,
that's not bad.
Toasticus.
I'm okay
the
with
Mosticus.
That one. Makes me sound like a Spartan.
Yeah, it was very Latin. Although the Spartans were Greek, but historical stuff. Anyway, welcome back, everybody. This is a new bestiary episode. We're talking about the Bruxa, which you're probably familiar with if you've watched the show, if you played any of the games. Bruxa are kind of everywhere. Is there a Bruxa in Witcher 2? 1 and 3 have a Bruxer. Bruxer.
It's in Witcher 2 as well. It's in every game.
Okay, yeah, every game. Yeah. I said Bruxer. That's what you say if you're from Boston. Yeah, the Bruxer. But anyway,
Bruxers are out and about again.
Bruxers are out.
That's not a Boston accent.
That's very different. Yes.
That's Southern, but it also works, I feel like.
Yeah. So. Good enough. Anyway, welcome back, everybody. Toasty's dealing with a little bit of a cold, but he's gonna tough through this because he's a Witcher, and that's what you do, right?
Yeah, and it's our 50th episode.
50th episode.
So
what?
Like. I can't postpone this one. I can't. I got to do this.
I know. It kind of snuck up on us. Like
I just was looking at it and I was like typing. I was setting up the outline. I was like, episode number
50.
What? How already?
Yeah. That's man. That means I don't remember exactly the date that we started the show.
On a year.
Yeah, but that means we're closing in on a year. We did miss a week or two.
In June last year around my birthday.
Well, there you go.
So.
Well, anyway, yeah. So here we are. So we're talking about a Bruxa, episode 50. Pretty solid topic for a 50th episode, and we've got a lot to go over. So strap yourself onto your roach and get ready for a ride. Because, horse.
You deliver it so awkwardly, but, it works. It works.
Yeah.
So like Tom said, we're talking about Bruxa tonight. Bruxa is a very powerful type of vampire that takes on the appearance of a dark-haired young woman or young human, most often female, but whose natural form is that of a large black bat with sharp fangs and claws. It is one of a few vampire species not affected by the sun, with the others being Alps, Mulas, and higher vampires. They are very agile, and only silver swords are effective against them. While they have sharp claws for close-up attacks, they can also let out a piercing scream from further away that can send a grown man flying through the air. Only Quinn is able to counter it, although the power of the cry can break through it in certain situations.
So what exactly is the cry?
The cry. So for anyone that's, consumed any form of Witcher media, but the best example I think is the show in this situation, season 2, episode 1 is a Bruxa. It's like, the other example I have is like Black Canary from like the DC stuff. It's essentially the same effect where they like scream and it's just sonic waves kind of that like blast you back.
Yeah. So. Yeah. Banshee from the X-Men. Maybe it's kind of similar to that. I'm not familiar as much with X-Men, so yeah, that's what it kind of makes me think of that. It's like this, waves of sound that are also very powerful, can knock things over or, break your eardrums, whatever. I find it very interesting in this first part that the natural form is the bat, not the humanoid.
Yeah, because that's what it's all about adaptation, right? Like they look like the bat, but they have developed the ability to blend in with normal people in society to more easily consume prey.
Yeah.
Right. Like,
yeah. because
people know to have, like, if you're a giant bat, you have to live like in the woods, outside, like in certain locations, and people, because other monsters exist, they know, like, hey, don't go into the woods at night because there's, you know, all kinds of monsters, including Bruxa and other vampires. Like, just don't
don't
if
go.
you value your life, don't go there. But they aren't limited by that, where they can look like a normal human and just be in a city. And there's an example in this of like even more adaptation on them that I'll get to later with a certain example.
Yeah, it's just that as a human, you tend to think that the humanoid shape is the default and the bat is a change. So like, for example, Dracula is a person who's a vampire who can turn into a bat, right? But this is kind of flipped. It's the other way around.
Or a bat that can turn into a human.
Yeah. So
the Bruxa have a habit of singing in their native language, especially after they drink blood, and their songs are described as silent, shrill, and sickening. Thanks to these, Bruxa can manipulate and bend to their will any human by altering their dreams and turning them into horrible nightmares. This is like an example. I believe they didn't touch on it like too much. They definitely describe it more in like the book story of Novellen, but like he talks about having like horrible nightmares, and kind of how like Verena like keeps him like, I guess, happy at night or something to like drive away the nightmares. He's like basically formed a reliance on her. Yeah. In response, he doesn't even realize that she's the one causing the nightmares for him.
Right. It's very manipulative.
Yeah. Notable Bruxa. Oh, sorry. They are also capable of telepathic speech and cannot be detected magically.
Oof.
Yes, they're the scary ones. Notable Bruxa are Verena, Orianna, and the Queen of the Night. Well, specifically, moving on to Witcher 1 example, got the bestiary entry. It is said that at night, Bruxa haunt attractive young men and drink their blood. These vampires move quietly in the dark to suddenly emerge near their victims. Bruxa are womanoids. And
womanoids.
I've never heard that word.
Well, humanoid, but specifically female.
Womanoids. Yeah. They may take the form of beautiful girls, leading some to mistake them for water nymphs, but their long fangs and unrestrained thirst for blood always betray them.
I like here how it says they move quietly in the dark to suddenly emerge near their victims. I have a feeling that this may have been one of those lines that they pulled some of their inspiration from in the representation of the Bruxa in the show, because of the way she can kind of very quickly and quietly move from one place to another. She does that like glitchy movement thing, but it's quiet, but it's quick. And so it could be the kind of thing where she's like hanging out in the corner of the room in the dark thing. You look away and then the next moment she's right up next to you and you're like, oh, where'd you come from?
Yeah. Obviously they are of the class vampire. They occur, either by living close to ruins or abandoned human settlements, more rarely in caves and grottos. They are immune to fear and resistant to stun attempts.
This is a gameplay.
They're susceptible in the game, for the gameplay.
Right.
Susceptible to silver and vampire oil. Their tactics are that they attack by surprise, try to daze their victims, and drink their blood. The lootable things are Abomination Lymph, Nazen Salts, and Bruxa Blood. Locations that they can be found are the House of the Queen of the Night, Swamp Cemetery, Old Manor Catacombs, Raven's Crypt, Elven Ruins.
And these are specific to the game. These are in-game locations.
Yeah, the Witcher 1. Right. So here's the example that I was talking about. So we have the Queen of the Night, who is a notable Bruxa. She is a higher vampire, or a Bruxa who's like very old, who owns a brothel, the House of the Queen of the Night, in the trade quarter in Vizima. Most of the women working there are, like the Queen of the Night, vampires that take blood in addition to money as payment for their sexual services.
Oh, can you imagine? Like, well, I'm out of coin, but here, have some blood.
I'm on tap. If you, it's fine. Yeah. Elder vampires do not need blood to sustain their life. It is more like alcohol or the drug that they enjoy the most. the player has the choice to kill the Queen of the Night or keep silent in exchange for a menage a trois with 3 of her Bruxa sisters.
Oh my God. Yeah, that first game was kind of extreme with some of that stuff.
Yeah, and I'm just like, what? You need
I don't know that that's a good idea.
But it's Geralt, so it fucks anything. Right. She is also noted to be the ex-lover of Emil Regis Rolahek Terzieff Godefroy.
Because of course she is.
For short.
Right.
For people who are familiar, he gets his own episode much later.
We'll get to him.
We'll get to him.
All right. So, well, Witcher 1 Bruxas. There you go. Now, like we were talking about earlier, they appear in all 3 games. So we've got the instance of Witcher 2, right?
Yeah. So, but just before I get there, just to note because you said before, like, the fact that they can look like it, like it's adaptation, and this, like, she adapted and became the owner of a brothel, so she doesn't even have to like hunt in the city.
No, she just brings in her prey.
Come to her.
Yeah.
And she doesn't even need to feed. She just wants to because she's so old. She doesn't need it. It's just like, this is nice. This is like my favorite wine. And I get to have my favorite wine come to me. So. And
there's also a little bit of like, she's kind of got like coven's not the right word, but like her nest of other. Is it the right word?
A coven. Well, I don't know if it'd be the right word in terms of a nest is probably, but because Bruxa, different mythologies do like portray Bruxa as witches, coven might be an adequate word there too.
Yeah, but it's almost like it's also a cover for her and the other Bruxa that she also kind of lords over as some of the workers at the brothel and all of that.
Yeah. So next, so we have The Witcher 2. Bestiary entry didn't exactly have too much information that wasn't already included in the other stuff, except for talking about how some of the typical vampire stereotypes of like garlic and sunlight aren't exactly inaccurate. They're just not quite accurate. Sunlight doesn't kill them, but they still don't like it, and they prefer nighttime, and garlic is annoying.
Yeah, but it's not going to keep them away if they really want to get you.
Yeah, it's not going to keep them away or kill them. So, of course, to the game stats, also, of course, a vampire. Immune to poison and bleeding. Susceptible to silver swords, the Igni sign, and knockdown. With their tactics, they hunt in packs and use their screeching to knock down prey. For loot, you have Bruxa teeth, essence of death, diamond dust, and amethyst dust.
So very different loot items, but again, a different game that's designed around different concepts of what you use the loot for and all that. But it's interesting how diverse this is.
Yeah. Locations, we have in chapter 1 near the bandit hideout beneath the tree with hanging elven corpses. It only spawns at night and will have a randomized female name. It will only spawn once per playthrough.
Oh, and that's so interesting.
Yeah, well, there's actually another interesting thing here where there's the same location. There is a wraith that has a randomized name and only spawns once per playthrough. And it is believed that they might be the spirits of an elven couple that are hanging from the tree in a side quest that got taken out of the production.
Oh, okay.
So
that's interesting.
Cool. So it's side quest that never made it to the final game, but it was a little bit of a detail that was still left. In chapter 2, the available to the Roche path only, the Little Sisters quest. However, while the creatures you fight are clearly Bruxa, they are tagged as wraiths, and their drops are strictly wraith drops.
Oh, weird. That's weird. Okay.
So there's a lot of weird production stuff going on in Witcher 2. And in chapter 3, the Ireveth path only, the Secrets of Lochmuin quest will take you to the Crypt of Mages dungeon where there are Bruxa.
Huh. Yeah, it's been so long since I played through this game. I don't have clear memory of either of these things. But
I don't as much either. So a lot of this stuff, So it's it's funny to go back and like find this and see like, oh, look at how weird, like how many game bugs there are for this.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah.
So, and next we move on to The Witcher 3, which is most people are probably more familiar with. So, the Bruxa does not appear in the base game aside from having a Gwent card. So in the monsters deck, of course. But they do appear in the Blood and Wine expansion. So for the bestiary entry, if you must travel through the woods, steer clear of any places where you can hear several different kinds of birds at once, which is actually something that links into the actual mythology, which we will get to. That sound means you're entering a Bruxa's territory and can kiss your life farewell. Anonymous piece of advice. Fortunately for us all, Bruxa are rare creatures. Most live far from population centers, for they care greatly for their own safety and make their lairs in places where they cannot be taken by surprise. Those who decide to live near men avoid crowds and emerge from the shelters only at night. When they do, one could almost mistake them for delayed travelers hurrying towards their night's lodging. Yet subtle details give them away. Their close ties to birds, their piercing voices, and the breathtaking speed of their movements. Bruxa are far swifter and stronger than men, but their greatest asset is their ability to turn invisible.
That is something that has not come up yet.
No,
invisibility.
It has, yeah, that's... Yeah. Whew.
That makes it just like 100 times worse.
Yeah, invisible monsters. All right. Terrible.
Yeah, wonderful. Great. So, do we have any hope now?
Yeah. So again, the class of vampire variations, the Bruxa of Corvo Bianco, occurrence in Toussaint, of course, because it's only available for Blood and Wine. And susceptibility, Moondust, Black Blood, Vampire Oil, and Irden. Combat tactics. Mm-hmm. If the Ard sign is used on any Bruxa you encounter in Toussaint, it is possible she can fall over and be killed by a single stab. Nice. Similar to how Harpies are defeated. Bruxa can turn invisible during the fight and perform strikes without being seen, making them, well, very dangerous.
Very dangerous.
The Moondust Bomb is effective against Bruxa, although not needed due to their slight visibility when moving while cloaked. So they're not completely invisible. You can still kind of make out when they move.
They're just extremely transparent.
Yeah. It is noted, however, that you will not be able to lock on to the Bruxa. So for people that play with that, I just never do. I just don't think about it, to be honest.
Yeah, I just kind of swing wildly.
Any game where you can lock on, I just kind of like...
I will use it on and off in like a Dark Souls game. Sometimes I find that beneficial. But yeah, I don't think I locked on too much in Witcher 3. I agree.
Yeah. Irden is extremely effective against Bruxa, as the vampire will uncloak when in range of the sign. So Irden, you get to see him. You can this is a combo, actually. You can easily one-hit kill any Bruxa by using a combination of Irden and Ard Sweep. Cast Irden immediately in an open area. Basic level Irden is enough. Pay attention closely to the cloaking distortion so you can clearly tell when they're about to close in on you. Once their cloaked selves are within the Irden trap, immediately cast Ard Sweep, immediately knocking them back, but making sure they're still inside the Irden trap. The trap will slow them from getting up, giving you plenty of time to close in and one-hit kill them while they're on the ground. It even works on the Bruxa of Corvo Bianco, which is like a unique variant.
Right. Like a special
even
one. On
Death March.
Oh, wow.
You can do that in the hardest difficulty in the game.
That's cool. That's cool.
So we have a notable Bruxa here as well. Orianna. For people who have seen the A Night to Remember trailer, you may be familiar. And of course, if you played it, you would be too.
Do we want to play it for them? Have it ready.
I will read this part first and then we'll play it.
All right. Sounds good.
Orianna was a Bruxa living in Toussaint around 1275. She was a good and longtime friend of the higher vampire Emil Regis Rolahek Terziev Godefroy. I love saying his full name. It's great. Or Regis. Orianna appeared to be very wealthy and a philanthropist, owning an orphanage and an estate, where at the latter she hosted lavish parties for artists, one of which Geralt and Anna Henrietta attended in disguise. She also paid a good deal of money to acquire the heart of Toussaint, an heirloom that had been passed down through Toussaint's royal family, but was lost when the last one to inherit it, Princess Silviana, was exiled from the kingdom. Orianna also appeared to be acquainted with Detlef and Regis, where she stated the latter as her friend from the past. However, her generosity with owning an orphanage turned out to have more sinister motives. Like many vampires, Orianna had a craving for blood, but she preferred the blood of children and periodically fed off the children there to satisfy her craving, though she did not kill them.
Which is, I guess, in some ways, even more horrifying.
That's true.
Can you imagine growing up with that being your memories of childhood?
I'm like wondering of like, if you could, I mean, with their like kind of mental abilities that like maybe they might be able to like make them seem like maybe it was just a nightmare, because I'm sure they're having nightmares enough already because they can inflict them at will.
Sure. Yeah, that's, I mean, either way, you're going to grow up pretty disturbed. Like most kids don't have those kinds of nightmares and regularly, right? Like my scary nightmare was like when I was a kid was like the Scooby-Doo villain like beat up the entire gang, and I was like, oh no, that's terrible. You know, like I don't remember having genuinely scary nightmares. More like things that I felt were scary as a child, you know?
Yep.
Yeah. All right. So time for the trailer?
Time for the trailer.
All right. Here's the trailer from the moment that the Bruxa shows up, right?
The moment he starts the fight.
Yeah. All right. That's it. That's so cool. It's such a freaking good trailer.
It was a really good trailer.
I'm sure those of you listening on the audio platform are like, that was a really cool cacophony of sound effects and music. If you haven't seen it, look it up. It's called A Night to Remember launch cinematic from The Witcher 3. And basically, the Bruxa bites into his neck at one point. It starts out invisible. They fight each other. It turns visible.
He throws the moon dust bomb that allows him to see it.
Right.
And then, of course, we see them fight. She takes a bite out of him, but he is down the black blood elixir, so
his blood is poisonous to her.
Toxic.
Yeah. And then he cuts her arm off, and then she goes crawling away, and he hits her with the crossbow bolt. But while she's crawling away, I love the the arm getting cut off and then like the steam rising out from the armhole. Did you notice that?
Yeah.
Oh man, so good. So good.
Yeah. Yeah. Plus the song's great.
Yeah. Yeah. The production on this stuff is always really, really good. So, man, that just makes me wonder what they're going to do for the next Witcher game, because we know it's coming. And
it was like, imagine if that's the launch cinematic trailer, like for the Witcher 3. I just can't imagine what the Witcher 4 is going to look like. Like,
oh yeah, and it's going to be on the Unreal Engine 5 or whatever the next one is.
Like so.
It's going to be so good. All right. Well, now's a good time for us to take our mid-break, thank our patrons, and then get on with some of the real-world mythology and some of the other stuff. So hang on tight. We'll be right back.
Very well. Let us get this over with. Something has infested my vineyard.
Mm-hmm. Great. Let me go prepare my something oil then.
So here we are in the middle of the show, and we've got a big thank you for Lucy G, our newest patron. Thanks for signing up. Thanks for being here. We really appreciate it. And to all of our 17, we're up to 17, Toasty, 17 patrons. That's awesome. Thank you so much, including our higher vampires, which may or may not be Bruxa. I don't know if they're just old Bruxa or like the class of higher vampire. Ben of Temeria, Cody and Carly S, and Jared M. Thank you so much for helping to support the show. We really appreciate it. Maybe we could hit 20. It'd be really cool if you guys are interested in helping to support the show. If you sign up, get us to a nice round number. That would be awesome. You get ad-free episodes, you get t-shirts, which go out regularly, and you get our thanks. We would really appreciate it. So patreon.com/Witcher Lorecast if you're interested in checking all that stuff out. And we don't have any new reviews this week, but if you'd like us to read out a review on a future episode, just go to Apple Podcasts. Whether you listen there or not, you can leave a rating and review, which is very helpful to us because some platforms you can't leave ratings for. So you could do that there. And that would be amazing. We'd read it out. Plus, you can leave a rating on Spotify as well, which would be very, very helpful. But man, 50 episodes, Toasty. Here's to another 50. And thank you for your support, everybody. All right, let's get on.
We're almost at 250 on Spotify. We're at 246.
Ooh, yeah, that would have been the hair dyeing number.
That would have been the hair dyeing number, but
yeah,
the Patreon got there first. So
yeah, thank you to everybody. We really do appreciate the support. We can't do this without you guys. We could put out the best show we could possibly put out, but if it wasn't for support from you guys, we wouldn't be able to keep it going or keep it growing. So genuinely, you are like half the equation for making a podcast work. So we really appreciate it. All right, let's move on with the rest of the show.
You smell of death and destiny, heroics and heartbreak.
It's onion.
Right, yeah.
So I know there's a topic you wanted to cover before we get to the real world mythology.
Mm-hmm. So for some of the either the show fans or people that are that started their Witcher journey with the books, maybe there is the story which we see in season 2, episode 1 of Verena and Nivellen.
Mm-hmm.
And obviously, if you want a more detailed look at this, of course, go either watch season 2, episode 1, or I don't know the name of it off the top of my head, but I believe it's in the second book, The Time of Contempt, where you can read about for the story of Nivellen, and go read that because it's also really good. But essentially, the idea is that Nivellen was this cursed man. He did horrible things to a priestess in her temple. He was cursed for it, turned into a monster. Essentially, the story of Beauty and the Beast, kind of, where he's like this horrid beast and like he has to fall in love in order to break the curse somehow. And he generally pawns off his money to try and get girls, like people, their fathers, to leave girls there. Goes through it for a long time. And then Geralt shows up because there's been some murders nearby. He's looking into it. He finds out it's not him. They have a talk. And Nivellen talks about this girl that he's with right now, who Geralt had seen earlier and mistook her for a Rusalka because they look similar in appearance if they're like, especially if they're far away, because he saw her from really far away. But as Geralt's leaving, he realizes that that Roach has been spooked the whole time, and he assumed Roach was spooked of the big scary monster dude. But when when Nivellen got close to Roach, there was no reaction. Like, it was fine. The horse liked him. So he realized that, like, oh, okay, what is this? She can't be a Rusalka because that would also not freak her out. Oh crap, I need to go back. Finds out she's a Bruxa. He actually lists so many different types of vampires before he gets there. And by the time he gets there, it's an oh shit moment where he's just like, oh, he's God. Like, oh no,
it's one of these.
Have his sword out.
Right.
So big fight happens. Nivellen helps to kill her by like impaling her. Geralt chops her head off, and then his curse is removed. But yeah, it's you get a more like of a closer look with the Witcher show. We're kind of seeing like we said before, the weird creepy movements, and then of course like the fight scene where they're doing,
she's like flying over him and he's like reacting while she tries to maneuver around him and all that stuff, right?
Yeah. So, which is actually funny because in the show, he's doing far better in the fight than he did in the book. He's like getting his ass handed to him in the book. Yeah. But in the show, he's like, I got this, does weird sword things where he cuts under him to cut her or whatever.
Right. Yeah. He leans over, the sword coming out from behind him when she didn't expect her to be vulnerable.
So
yeah.
She is, I would say she's probably the most prominent Bruxa that we get to see, because they don't show a whole lot of monsters in the books, contrary to like what you might think. But she's definitely a big prominent one that we get an actual like fight scene with, which is cool.
Yeah, I feel like you get more monsters in the like the short story books. That's kind of, and that's part of why they're so fun, is that each one is kind of its own little monster tale. Yeah.
So that's it for the Witcher Bruxa. We're going to move on to the real world mythology, which to be fair, while I was like doing the research on this, there was like every time I like saw this, like it would talk about how the Witcher brought the Bruxa to life. So I guess it wasn't a very like popularly used like
it's like a very like
mythology, like
fairly unknown phrase. And for this one, we're moving to Western Europe instead of Eastern Europe, which is different.
It's a bit different. So the Bruxa is the Portuguese name for a type of vampire found in Iberian or Spanish Portuguese folklore. I think it's what the Iberian Peninsula, right? That's
the little nub that Spain and Portugal are on. The little nub at the end of Europe.
In Spanish, it is referred to as the Bruja. According to legends, the Bruxa were once humans that, through the power of witchcraft, transformed themselves into the undead. Once undead, the Bruxa developed a craving for blood. Their typical victims are infants, young animals, and unwary travelers.
Yummy.
Though the name of the Bruxa translates to English as witch, they are considered to be a kind of vampire, while the term feiticeria is instead used to denote what an English speaker would consider to be a witch. The Bruxa's true form is that of a tall, slender woman of fair proportions wearing scanty white garments. As unholy creatures, they're considered to be sexual partners of the devil himself.
This is another one. That's one of those things that pops up in a lot of old mythology, is this like women who decided to have sex with the devil. And that,
because that was the whole ideology of like witches, right? During like the Salem witch trials, is that they were the brides of the devil, and that's why they deserve to die. Like they were
right. This whole men being uncomfortable with women's sexuality thing totally leaked into their perception of all of this stuff, which led to a lot of people dying, which is why it's a good thing we have science now. Let's make sure science sticks around.
Yeah, because I mean, as we will point out again, this is the fourth or fifth example of a monster that is typically considered to be a woman, which,
Yep. Yeah. Women get villainized a lot in religious and mythological works because men were afraid of things they didn't understand and they didn't want to lose power. And there's a lot of psychology underneath all of that. So.
Yeah. According to northern Portuguese folklore, bruxas are thought to be extremely common and appear at night. They typically stay just outside of view with their laughing and clapping indicating their presence. When seen, they will quickly take the form of waterfowl, and the sound of flapping waterfowl wings at night is another sign of their presence.
So this is kind of a connection to the different types of birds thing.
Yes. So this is this is the point, is that they have like this close relationship with birds rather than like bats. I think that's a combination of just generally the typical vampire like folklore of being akin to bats. I mean, with Dracula, who could like turn into a bat in most of his incarnations and stuff like that. Like, right. They kind of blended them here, which we know that they do that sometimes as far as some of the monsters.
Yeah.
Like a waterfowl, the bruxas can be found flying through the air and are fond of swimming in rivers and streams. There are also many tales of fishermen claiming to have seen glimpses of bruxas at night, singing on the white crests of waves in a manner similar to sirens, though encountering bruxa at sea is considered to be somewhat less dangerous than encountering sirens.
I can imagine neither of them is good. But
yeah, probably not, but all right. Bruxa is slightly better, Yeah.
Yeah.
The Bruxas' favorite victims by far are newborn babies. They are thought to be able to sneak into households, though even the smallest cracks, using their shape-shifting abilities, and are thought to have the power to inflict drowsiness on those inside once they've entered. Once they reach an unattended newborn, they'll use their body weight to smother the baby to death and then feed by sucking their blood.
So
tough stuff.
Yeah. So this probably has a lot to do with two things. One, things like SIDS, like unexplained deaths of infants, which still happen because sometimes, babies just stop breathing. And to say like, oh, some monster snuck in here and smothered it might be a way to explain that, right? Because they didn't understand what was happening. We still don't really fully understand why that happens. And two, a lot. I mean, in historical times, in ancient times, in medieval times, there were a lot of children that were just gotten rid of. Like killing your kids because you didn't want them was way more common than anybody thinks about now in the modern world. It was actually very, very common. And to be able to say like, oh, we didn't kill the baby. It was a bruxa. It was a monster. We're terrified, is an easy way to deal with that socially. But there was a lot of child mortality just by parents who just didn't want their kids, or would give them away, or would leave them outside and say, you can't come back in, go away. There's a lot of terrible things that people did in the past. And we don't talk about it because it doesn't come up, but it's a lot more than you would expect.
Other times they are said to pinch, bite, scratch, or strike the infant, leaving visible marks on the dead child's body. So, yeah. So a multitude of ways that they seem to die, which really fits into your thing there.
Whatever explanation you want, you can use it. It'll work. Just say the Bruxa did it.
Yeah. Sometimes the Bruxa will attack adults at night, causing them to feel a great suffocating weight on top of them. During the trial of Susanna Dalmau in 1951,
1591. Sorry.
1591.
It has a very big difference. Yes.
It is a very big difference. Pedro Gil gave this account of a Bruxa attack. One night, while this depositor was in bed sleeping, he felt a lump like a person on top of him, and wanting to get up, he forced himself and could not. and then he got up and felt the weight on his legs, and this depositor threw a punch and hit himself in the leg.
So let's pause here. This is very similar to like night terrors, which we have a better understanding now with science. Like when you're in that mode of half asleep while you're just waking up or just falling asleep, sometimes the aware part of your brain wakes up, but you physically cannot move yet because that part of your brain is still in sleep mode. So sleep paralysis. And there are a lot of, and we're about to talk about succubus too, but there are a lot of justifications historically, again, in mythology and religion, for why this happens. And yeah, it's scary. I mean, I remember this happened to me a lot growing up, but I didn't understand what was going on. I didn't ever feel like there was a demon in the room or something, but it definitely didn't feel good because I was doing everything I could to move and I couldn't. And I was still aware of like people talking around me and things like that. Like if I fell asleep on the couch or something as a kid, like that kind of thing. So yeah, very real thing that can happen.
Yeah. Other times, these nocturnal attacks on adults were sexual in nature, making the Bruxa similar to a succubus, which, I mean, talk about the Queen of the Night in The Witcher 1, who was traded blood for sexual favors.
Right,
like
running a brothel, like the whole sexual nature of that, yeah.
Protection from Bruxas, according to Portuguese folk belief, it is thought to be impossible to actually kill a Bruxa, but there are many ways to protect oneself from one. Like conventional vampires, Bruxa are repulsed by both the signs of the cross and by garlic. Besides the cross, the seal of Solomon is another common protective symbol that can be found on buildings, carts, boats, and ox yokes. Like in many other parts of Europe, the Portuguese believe that the Bruxa and other sorts of malevolent supernatural creatures are repulsed by metal, particularly iron. Because of this, it is not uncommon for metal scissors configured into the shape of the cross to be used as protective talismans against Bruxas.
Yeah,
that's pretty cool.
Yeah. And it's interesting here because that's different than silver. In The Witcher, it's always the silver that's good against monsters. But in a lot of historical sources like this, it's actually iron. So there's changed, I guess.
People that came up with this, they valued their silver. They wanted to keep it in their pockets, maybe.
Right. Well, it makes, I mean, iron was something you used to make swords and tools and those kinds of things. So it would make sense. Like if you were defending yourself against some sort of scary thing, you're going to grab your pitchfork. I mean, if you're just a common person who doesn't have a sword, you're going to grab like your fire poker or your pitchfork or something made out of iron. So to give you hope of like, oh, we'll use something iron to fight the monster, because nobody has a silver sword sitting around. Like that historically wasn't a thing.
Yeah. Which, I mean, that also fits and ties into like other types of like supernatural creatures, like commonly like representations of like spirits and stuff are repelled by iron or can't cross like iron thresholds or something like that.
Poor Toasty with his sore throat. Oh
yeah, sorry, but it's all right. I'm doing much better than I thought I was going to be. Also common to many other parts of Europe, bread is believed to have protective qualities. The mere act of touching a piece of bread can provide protection against evil figures such as the Bruxa. So that's
eat your bread.
If you got some bread in your house, good. You're good. Another protective charm against the Bruxa is a small bag worn as a type of necklace containing a chip of stone from a Christian altar and 4 leaves, a leaf from a rue, an olive leaf, or a bay leaf, and a periwinkle leaf.
This led to the chipping of altars all across the Iberian Peninsula.
Yeah.
Why is the altar chipped? Priest, father.
The church needed money, so we decided to sell protective amulets.
Yeah, bits to the commoners.
So it's also kind of like a lucky 4-leaf clover thing, which is cool. On May Day, the Bruxa is considered to be particularly active. On that day in northern Portugal, metal horseshoes or mule shoes with an uneven number of shoe holes. You're messing up my outline.
Sorry.
You threw me off. It moved.
Sorry, I didn't mean to.
With an uneven number of shoe holes are found nailed to front doors in order to protect households. Every cart, plow, ox yoke, and stable is protected by adorning them with sprigs from the common broom plant. And every person and farm animal is protected by a red wool thread placed around the neck.
Weird. Weird.
May Day, I believe, is Beltane, right? Is that
So that's
different?
the thing I was curious about. May Day is May 1st. Halfway between the spring equinox and summer solstice.
I think that matches up with Beltane as far as I know too.
Okay. Yeah, that's the thing I copied, but for some reason it deleted it when I copied it. That's what moves
Beltane.
That's what moved the show notes around. Yeah.
But basically big party like celebration. There's other like significance with it that I should remember, but I can't remember right now because I'm playing a Changeling game, and Beltane is a significant holiday for Changelings. but also like pay, which that kind of makes sense. Like the idea of like the because obviously a lot of the preconceived notions about Bruxa fit into the idea of like witches or just like women that aren't obedience, which generally was kind of the idea of that.
Yeah.
Or, and of course on like one of the prominent pagan holidays, of course, the Bruxa are more prevalent because, the pagans are celebrating and they aren't worshiping God, and that brings about the devil more kind of thing.
Right. Of course.
So,
yeah, man, cool stuff as usual. This has been a lot of fun going over the details here. Any other thoughts on Bruxa? I mean, they show up pretty regularly, as we noted in the games.
There've been iterations in all the games.
Yeah.
I mean, as far as the books go, we're only given a handful of monster fights. I mean, we got the Striga, we got the Bruxa,
Kikimora.
Dragon doesn't really count as one.
Dragon doesn't. Yeah,
he doesn't really fight the Kikimora. He just has a Kikimora corpse.
That's
when
true.
He comes to the town. Like,
that's right.
The show added a bit of, like, the fight to make it a bit more exciting.
You're right.
As a cool intro. So, and then like, I'm trying to think of other examples, but
I mean, there's other times he talks to trolls. He talks to.
He talks about all these things, but he doesn't like fight them very often.
Right. Or he talks to them
very often. Yeah.
Like they end up being, like the skin changer, whatever it's called.
The
shapeshifters. Dudu. Yeah. Like Dudu's a character, right? And he technically is a monster.
But like, it's like, and it's all pretty much short stories. Like once you start like the actual like story of like Ciri and, like you don't get as much of that.
Yeah.
So it's obviously one of the most well-known. So
yeah, I hope we get more monster fights. I know in the show is getting more and more into like the full length novels and where all that stuff's going, which isn't going to be these monster stories. It's going to be politics and mages and elves. And
it's already had more monster fights compared to like the books. I mean, we got to see the Kikimora, but we knew that he fought, but we didn't get to like they didn't describe it in the book.
Right.
The Striga, which was included, the Bruxa, which was included, but then we got the Leshen.
Right.
We got the weird Scolopendromorph thing.
Yeah, we got some of the other weird monsters that came up.
Yeah.
And then the big finale for season 2.
Yeah, of course, like with the Deathless Mother. So
yeah. But to my point, it would be really cool if either in one of the other Witcher series or in some of the like cartoon stuff that they're putting out, that we didn't get more just Witcher tales. Like, because that's part of what I really love about the Witcher stuff. And I think that's how a lot of people, if you enter through the games or the short stories, that's a lot of what you're getting are these little side quest kinds of things where Geralt has to go fight some monster or something's weird's going on in this town. He's got to figure it out. Like it's the part of the Witcher series that feels sort of like being a Jedi in a medieval monster filled world. Right. Where like the Jedi would show up in a place and they'd be like, oh, somebody's ruining the peace. OK, we've got to deal with it. And then they'd move on to somewhere else and they have special powers and they can do things nobody else can do. Everybody recognizes them when they show up. Not everybody likes them when they show up. Like I've always seen the Witchers as kind of this like darker version of these like nomadic, like fantasy Jedi kind of characters. And I think it would be really cool to get a little bit more of that, written out.
I mean, Yeah, because even like in a sense of like how they were made, like with the reference I made way back when of like they were trying to make paladins and they accidentally made rangers instead. And it's so it's like nobody and like with how they're treated. Yeah. So you get like a very dark aspect of like, well, they're doing good for humanity, but yet humanity doesn't like them regardless. Right. So like
just like a Jedi on like a dangerous planet
are what they have, you know? Like, they're very no, I'm not going to make a comparison. The Ben's probably going to yell at me. I was thinking of like any like a best maybe example is like Mace Windu, because he's not like I believe his like lore is that he like manifests kind of his anger into like a force for the light kind of thing. That's why his like he uses like a Sith fighting style that he's repurposed for the Jedi, like kind of thing.
Gotcha. Yeah, I'm sure Ben, you should do an episode on that with Holocron Histories. But yeah, well, we could always go on about this stuff forever, and I'm sure we will on a future episode, but we got to wrap this one up. Toasty, I know you got some other stuff cooking. Do you know when your season 2 of Cyberpunk is coming out yet?
So I believe that the 12th is what I've said before. That seems to be
so just like a week.
We're going
less than a week from us recording this, which is even less than a week from when this comes out for most of our listeners.
Yeah, I know. Wow. It was unfortunate because we had recording on Saturday, but I just couldn't like bring up the energy / didn't think that it would work very well for me to record with him because of me being sick. So because I was coughing a lot more. And like, even like
your character,
I was going to try and like, you know, deal with it. And then I just started having like a horrible coughing fit right before. Yeah. And it was just like, I was like, yeah, dude, just like have me go off and do something for this episode. Cause I just cannot do anything right now. It's really bad.
That's a bummer. Yeah. Stuff's going around and I hope you feel better. Anything else you want to share?
Follow us on Twitter at the Witcher Lorecast. I don't really have anything too crazy.
Okay.
Otherwise.
All right. I've got all my shows. You know what's going on with me, probably, if you've listened to this for 50 episodes. I've got all my different Lorecasts. I'm coming up close to the 200th episode of the Fallout Lorecast, and almost and a little bit further away, but still close with the Elder Scrolls Lorecast. And then the Lord of the Rings Lorecast is like 15 episodes now. It's all that stuff's going great. If you guys are looking for more podcasts, you can check out my other shows or any of the other shows on the network. We've got lots of shows that cover all sorts of stuff. robotsradio.net, or join us on the Discord and take a look on there. There's a whole list of all the different shows, and all the hosts hang out, and you can say hi to all of us and chat about stuff. We'd love for you guys to be involved. And thanks again for listening. And until next time,
stay safe on the path.
See you later, everybody. Thanks for tuning in to the Witcher Lorecast. We'd love to hear about your experiences with the games and the books and the TV series and all your thoughts on everything. Please check out the Robots Radio Discord and follow us on Twitter at Witcher Lorecast.
You've been listening to a Robots Radio podcast. Smart shows for interesting people. Check out all the shows at robotsradio.net.